Okay, good morning. Welcome to the regular Tuesday morning CREST Network webinar. Today, as we do on the fourth Tuesday of the month, we do a Q&A. We tally up all of the questions that we've been asked from members and non-members over the past month or so and try to pick a half a dozen to 10 of them that are probably most applicable to everybody listening. So I'm Dick Wagner. Bill Giannone is with us. Bill, you there?
I am here, Mr. Wagner. Great to hear you and great to be with you again.
All right. So let's see if I can get these slides to advance. Yes, and look at that. The first question is one that I'm going to address, and it has to do with accountability. It has to do with holding your marketers accountable for all of their actions. I don't mean just that they show up for work every day, or that they go through the motions of certain things that the owner has requested, but there's a whole lot of accountability that comes into play from who you see, what you say when you see them, how you record or track or keep a record of who you saw and what was said and what kind of Maven articles were left and so forth. So if you really want to dig deep into holding marketers accountable, one of the ways that you can do that is go to the CREST Network and click on the blog articles and look for an article entitled "Holding My Marketers Accountable." For owners, that's easy. You can see the kinds of things that you should be holding your marketers accountable to. For the marketers that are on and listening, you can see the kinds of things that you should be accountable for and be able to provide that accountability to your owners and your managers and so forth. But in general, you should be keeping track of and know how many hours you should be working each week on average. You should know how many prospects and clients you visit every week and how many prospects and clients you should be visiting every week. And I'm going to put an asterisk beside that one because the fact is, during the coronavirus thing, we have certain pockets of the country that are a little more restrictive than others. And so, your number of face-to-face visits, for example, will be different than it would be during what I guess we're calling normal times. You should also, and hopefully your owner, manager, your sales manager, somebody has given you guidance on how many lunches you should be having with clients and prospective clients, how many interviews you do with agents and plumbers and so forth. Even right down to knowing how many prospects you have in the sales funnel, how many prospects you need to keep in front of in order to keep that funnel full, and then how many of those prospects merge through the funnel and come out the other end as a customer or as a client referring work to you. So please go to the website, search for the blog article entitled Holding My Marketers Accountable. It applies both to the owners and to the marketers, and I think it'll help give everybody a much better idea of how their marketers should be, or how you as a marketer should be conducting yourself. Next one is you, Bill.
Thanks, Dick. Before I go on to this one, I just wanted to add a minute or so onto to dovetail onto your accountability example. This applies to not only marketers, but it applies to everybody in the company. And there are two things that we need to make sure we have established as owners or managers or even as marketers and all other workers. We need to make sure, number one, that we have processes in place so that the expectations are clearly defined. What we want them to do and how we want them to do it have to be clearly defined. It's hard to hold somebody accountable if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So let's make sure, number one, we're making really good steps towards having good, solid, consistent, objective processes in place. The second part of the accountability is we need to have expectational goals as well. A lot of people call them KPIs, key performance indicators. It's not enough to tell somebody you have to go out and see plumbers, or you have to go out and visit agents' offices. You have to give them an idea of how many you want them to see in what period of time. And then you have to have an ultimate goal of what you want to get out of that, whether it's a certain number of leads generated or what those leads are going to result in terms of dollar amounts of business. All those things have to be part of your plan. And if you're not capable or able to define and discern those to your staff, that's something that we, both Dick and I, can help you with. So let's make sure that we have both pieces in place. We have the processes and expectations in place, and we also have the accountability factor on the back end through key performance indicators and goals. Thanks, Dick.
Thanks, Billy.
No problem. Mine is, my company is going to make a large profit this year. How can I avoid paying a lot of taxes? I hope every owner that is watching us today is saying this to themselves. Even through this COVID year, I know there have been a lot of struggles and difficulties for a lot of companies, but I also know that many of our clients have overcome these struggles and have actually come out the other side pretty well off. So if you happen to be one of the fortunate companies that is able to say that you're going to have a large profit this year, the time to worry about what you should do with your profit is not January. The time is usually November and December. And yes, there are ways to avoid paying a lot of taxes, but I'm also going to quote somebody, and I thought it was the best statement I've heard when they said to me, the best check they write out every year is the check to the IRS, because that means that they're making money every year. So don't necessarily take action so that you pay zero tax. If that's the goal, you're going to be getting yourself out of your game. Let's look at it this way, and I'm going to use a crazy example. If you make $100,000 in profit, if you're in a normal tax bracket, you're going to pay no more than $30,000 to $35,000 total in taxes, counting your state taxes as well. So that leaves you with anywhere from $65,000 to $70,000 or possibly more $1,000 that you can use to put back into your business, to reinvest in your business. There are many times when, talking to Dick and myself about different ways that you can invest into your business, especially on the marketing side, you can expect to get returns of 8, 10, 12, 20 times your investment, depending on what you're investing in. So for instance, if you're going to take that $70,000 and you're going to put $5,000 or $6,000 a month into someone who's going to go out and market for you, then you could expect to get back a 10 to 12 ROI on that. You could generate another $700,000, $800,000 for your company. So don't always sit there and say, I need to get rid of the money now so that I don't pay tax, because that $70,000 after tax can go a long way. Now, that said, if you're going to need to spend some money because you just got too much profit and everything's going great, there are ways to do it. The government still allows you the write-off for investing in large equipment. Okay, this doesn't usually count for our air movers and DUs, but we're talking about if you needed to buy a new truck for your company, even marketing vehicles, depending on the size of the vehicle. Regular cars usually don't count for these accelerated depreciation write-offs. So you might have to get them a pickup truck, because usually pickup trucks and above would be what we're talking about. But you can buy your company a new response vehicle, and that money, you could basically get a dollar for dollar return on your taxes this year, because your company will be investing in that. And there's what they call accelerated depreciation. I don't want to get too technical, guys, but usually depreciation is what they call a non-cash transaction on your taxes, where you're allowed to write off your assets because over time they do become less and less valuable, so you get to take a depreciation cost. When you buy new, larger pieces of equipment or vehicles, you're allowed to take what they call accelerated depreciation. So instead of taking over a 7-year period 1/7 of the cost of that vehicle, you can take the entire cost of that vehicle as a write-off in the year that it was purchased. So I suggest you use this as a rule of thumb. If you would not make the purchase on January 1st, don't make the purchase on December 31st. Basically, that just means if you don't need the vehicle or the large equipment for your company now, don't go out and buy it just for the write-off. Choose what I discussed first. Choose to pay the taxes and utilize that cash to make your company much bigger. Thanks, Dick.
Thanks, Bill. Next question. I've probably had this asked of me, oh gosh, once a week. Seems like once a week, month after month, year after year. And we backed off on this during the coronavirus time, but as that's winding down and more areas are opening up, I'm starting to be a little more flexible about that. The question is, can you provide on-site training in my office? And if you can, if you will come to my office and do the training, what are the advantages? Why would I do that as opposed to sending one of my staff to one of your training classes that you hold in Fort Myers, Florida, or Atlanta, Georgia, or uh, other places? And so the short answer is that when we come to your office to do training, it's personalized. It is exactly, hopefully, what you need for your company in your city. Before we do on site training, especially the sales and marketing training, we research and evaluate and study and understand several things: the demographics of your community, the kind of area that you are marketing in, what's the corporate culture within your company, how many people do you have on staff, how many marketers do you have, do you have an additional office manager, do you have project managers, senior project managers, and so forth. And where I'm going with that is you can send one person to, let's say, Fort Myers, Florida, and pay for that person's airfare and hotel and rental car and all of the other costs involved. Or you can pay that same thing to Bill or myself. You still have the same hotels and car rentals and airline tickets, but the advantage to the on-site is that we don't care if you have 2 or 15 in the class. It doesn't matter. And many times, earlier in this year and for the past many years, I presented training to people in their offices where they would bring in 2 or 3 project managers, an office manager, their social media person, their sales estimator, and as well as the GM and marketers. One that I did recently had 4 full-time marketers on staff. So it's certainly far more cost effective when you want to have more than one person learning to have us come to your facility. Costs end up being basically about the same. The other thing, or another thing that you gain, is a much better productivity. You're not pulling 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 people out of your office and out of the state for the classes. It's right there, so they can step out of their office at lunchtime and go to their desk and handle an issue that has cropped up. And there is a big advantage to that. A couple other things just to mention for you is that you get consistent messaging. When you send one marketer to a class out of town or out of state, that marketer hears it a certain way and goes back and tries to present that what they learned to their owner or their GM. And when I'm in front of 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 people, it's consistent messaging. Everybody is hearing and understanding the same thing. And if they're not, we can clarify those things right out of the gate. It certainly boosts the productivity of your staff by having them all close by to handle things. Another really cool thing that we do consistently, whether it's Bill doing admin and or financial training or me doing sales and marketing training, is we study and learn and understand the organization, the community, the culture, the demographics, so that we understand that how you conduct business in the Midwest is different than how you conduct business in New Jersey. And that's different than how you conduct business in El Paso or in Louisiana. They're all different. And we take the time to make sure we understand all of that. So what we're presenting absolutely makes sense. One of the other things that I love to do, and some of those people attending class hate to do it, is role playing. Role playing is, as an example, is where I'll let the marketer be the insurance agent and I'll be the marketer. And we pretend we're going through a presentation or an engagement or an interaction. Same thing with a plumber. And those role playing uh, times in a class, they're certainly easier when it's done at your office. It's certainly more comfortable, but most of all, it's extremely valuable. So, and I can go on, I've got a list of 25 different things that are advantages to doing on site training. And no, for me, I'm not really anxious to get on a Delta flight wearing a mask for 5 hours and only to get off and have to wear it through the airport and then wear it at your facility. But we do whatever we have to do. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Dick. Great info. My question is, how can I get more out of my office staff? sometimes this question comes and there's a clear answer, but many times this question comes out of a frustration of the owner. And I have to be honest with most of you owners, many times you're looking for something that just can't happen. Many times what you're doing is you're taking your staff and you're trying to make them do the work of 3 or 4 people, as opposed to defining their roles, setting expectations like we talked about before in the accountability question, and just driving them to be taskmasters at 1 or 2 really important parts of the process. The most difficult decision as we grow our businesses is how much do we invest in what I call non-revenue generation. And we know the math. We know that if we hire marketers, they're going to bring in a certain amount of business. If we've got a certain amount of business, we need a certain amount of staff. We need to have, technicians and crew members, and we understand all of that. We need to buy vehicles. But the biggest issue is we take for granted that we need to staff our office with the proper number of people to handle the volume of work and everything that comes with it. Now, there is no really straight answer for how many people I should have in my company based on a dollar amount, because how you generate that dollar amount varies greatly from company to company. There are some restoration companies that do a high volume of business, but they concentrate mostly on commercial work. So they don't have the volume and turnover of the day-to-day business that would require a very large staff. Other companies might do a ton of program work. And if you're doing a lot of program work, you need an inordinate amount of staff to handle that program work, because in your contract, you've committed to all sorts of different information and documentation deadlines that I've heard stories that companies need 3 and 4 office staff members just to be able to report back to their program administrators each and every day. So clearly, depending on your business blend and what type of business you're doing, that's going to determine how much staff you need. If you feel like your staff isn't working hard enough, then it's kind of simple. What you need to do is you need to make sure that you give them enough tasks so that they're working hard each and every day, but you're not bogging them down so you find that you're always waiting for information from them. I would rather be able to give my staff one more task to do than to have to sit there and constantly try to figure out what tasks I want to take away from them. Same thing applies with your production staffs as well. It's so much better to say that they've got 4 hours a week to sit around and clean equipment rather than saying they're never, ever sitting around and I probably am working them a little too hard. We want to make sure we're maximizing the use, but we also want to make sure when it comes to office staff that we're not being cheap. We're not just saying, oh, my wife and I can handle it all. Because you know what, guys? I've said this in previous webinars, and this is a really, really big talking point for me, especially the older I get. We don't want to be owners of companies to buy ourselves a job. We want to be owners of companies to give ourselves the freedom to be flexible enough to not have to work and still have revenue coming in. That's the goal of ownership. So let's not try to put everything on our own shoulders or the 1 or 2 people in our office who are getting overwhelmed with answering phones and doing paperwork and doing accounting work. It's just too much sometimes. I say give them tasks. If you have a lot of paperwork, if you're doing a lot of residential water damage, you need somebody who's in charge of the paperwork. You need a file manager, a file coordinator. Even if it's someone who's just coordinating the efforts of the crews, making sure that they're doing their documentation, and then also making sure the homeowners and customers are happy. You need to have someone doing that separate and apart from you guys. The only responsibility owners should have in a business is troubleshooting. I always say when it gets to the owner, that's when it really is an issue. All the other stuff, the regular, mundane, everyday tasks, should be handled by the office staff. If you are doing more than 15 or 20 jobs a month, I recommend having your own bookkeeper. Don't make the file manager or your wife or yourself do the bookkeeping as well. You have a lot of transactions, And the more bookkeeping transactions you can have in your company accessible to you regularly, the better off you're going to be with those KPIs and those expectations and the analysis of your business. So understand that there are times when you need to spend money on non-producing staff members. Your office should be as big as you want to be, not as small as you can make it. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you. Next question. Oddly enough, I've had this asked of me numerous times, especially over the last few months, and I think that question came out of the concern that marketers in many areas didn't have the ability or the opportunity because of county or state rules and regulations to do face-to-face interaction. And so, the next best thing was to resort to an interaction via email or text or phone calls or, in this case, newsletters. And the question is, is the newsletter worth it? Is it? So it's a fair amount of effort. And if it is worth it, what should it say? What should it contain to make it useful or valuable? There are 100 ways that I can answer this question. The simplest and easiest way is to give you an example from my own personal life. For 10 years prior to joining with Bill and forming the CREST network over a year and a half ago, I sent out my own regular newsletter, to hundreds of prospects and clients. And I tracked the open rate. We track how many clicks or click-throughs we got from having a hyperlink, a URL link on the newsletter that they could click and go someplace else to our website or to our Facebook page or so forth. And we tracked all of that. And for those of you that don't know, both Constant Contact, which is a newsletter, basically a newsletter service, and MailChimp, which is a newsletter service, both of those will tell you that the national average open rate for your newsletter, your email newsletter, is about 15%, 15%. In other words, for every 100 contacts that you send that newsletter to, only about 15 of them actually ever open it. And even then, it doesn't say how many read it. That just means how many opened it. So the open rate is quite low nationally. So with that benchmark of 15%, I worked very, very hard for 8, 9, 10 years to always better that, to best that, to get it higher than 15%. And I can tell you that on average, for the past many years, we consistently got an open rate upwards of 23, 24, 25%. There were occasional times when we'd hit 35 and 40%. But how we achieve that and how you should be achieving that when you're going to be doing this is saying the right thing. So many people, and I see this on Facebook, I see this on Twitter, I see this on LinkedIn, and I see this in regular emails and newsletter emails that come into my mailbox. The vast majority of people are spending their time with self promotion. They're patting themselves on the back. Call me if you have a water damage. We're the greatest water suckers ever in the world. Call me, call me. And that's the kind of in your face, obnoxious, offensive email newsletter stuff that nobody wants. You need to provide, and the term that was coined quite some time ago, not by me, was edutainment. It needs to be education combined with entertainment. Make it fun and interesting so they're learning. And that's what you should be striving for. The whole idea of a newsletter, the whole reason why you would even go to the trouble to send it out is for the touch. You need a touch. You need to touch your clients in some way, some fashion. You need to have an exposure, or they need to have an exposure to you. They need to see your name. They need to see something interesting or positive or exciting or educational or entertaining, giving them the feeling, oh, you guys are good people. That's really cool. That's fun. I learned something. And so the weekly newsletter, yes, it can be hugely valuable to you to facilitate giving your prospects and your clients one more touch. Remember, you can only get to visit them once a week, or excuse me, once a month, maybe. But the newsletter comes into their inbox every week. And that, even if they delete it, they see your name. It's one more touch. If you need to know how to better send a newsletter, what content should be in there, I'm as close as a phone call. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Dick. I get this quite a bit from a lot of different people in the industry. What are some ways to enhance my invoices? Basically, the question is more direct than this. How can I get a larger invoice is usually the question. I'm just trying to word it very politely here. The best way to enhance your invoice is to understand Xactimate a little bit better. It's as simple as that. Most of us use Xactimate. If you don't, then congratulations to you. You still need to understand the intent behind your actions out in the field, and you need to understand how adjusters and the insurance companies are interpreting your invoices. And yes, they are interpreting them. They are trying to find out from your invoice what the story is. I make a lot of enemies in the restoration industry when I say that adjusters are not the enemy. Most of the times we are our own worst enemy, because we allow them the ability to start straying from, well, this is just normal and everything's okay with this invoice. We make some mistakes that we shouldn't. We make some unforced errors that forces them to think we're crooks. We bill for 5 days of drying. We don't send any moisture logs. That's a main issue that I've found out with most companies. They refuse to send the documentation until they're asked for the documentation. Guess what, guys? It's already too late. By the time the adjuster asks for documentation, he's already got it in his head that you're hiding something. So he's already on a negative slant with you. So first and foremost, let's document everything up front. If we're billing for something, use a lot of F9 notes in your Xactimate. Make sure you're explaining every single line item. Okay? When it comes to ways to raise your invoice, I'm not going to take credit for this. This is a Jeremy Reitz idea that came years ago at actually one of our webinar, one of our seminars that Dick and I were putting on years ago for, actually it was for the prep conference. And Jeremy said one of the single best ways to enhance your invoice is to know the S500 and to actually use the S500. One of the things we do is we use the S500 for our air mover calculations, but we always forget that in each individual room, the calculation says every 50 to 70 square foot, and it does all the extras for the little indentations, more than 18 inches, and the little cutouts and knockouts in the room. But it also says +1 air mover. So we go into a 300 square foot room and we put 6 air movers in when the standard actually says to put 7 in. The single greatest revenue factor is that extra air mover because number one, you're following the standard. Number two, the adjusters can't question you on it because you are following the standard. And number three, if an average job is a 4-day dry down, you're getting upwards of $100 a day, depending on where you are. It could be closer to $120 a day. A job. Anywhere from $25 to $30 a day we're getting for those air movers. So let's just say we put it on for 4 days and we're even at $25 an air mover. You're at $100 per job. If you're a normal company that does 15 to 20 jobs, you're doing anywhere from 200 to 250 jobs a year. That single air mover gets you $20,000 to $25,000 of additional profit. It's not costing any more to put that additional air mover on. Follow all of the ISRC S500 guidelines and the S520 guidelines, making sure that your workers understand them and that they're performing their job functions using those standards. And I mean things like PPE. We have to make sure we're using adequate PPE. Let's also understand that if we're cutting drywall, the new silica standards require us to take much greater steps in controlling the dust and controlling the debris removal from that drywall than it ever did before. For many of us, this is going to involve minimally the use of some PPE and either a HEPA vacuum to be with the cutting tool to make sure that no dust is getting airborne, or to use a HEPA vacuum in cleaning up our debris. That difference in use of equipment results in a difference in price because we're using additional equipment. Remember, if we use equipment that we own, it's all profit to us other than the maintenance and storage of that equipment. So those are high profit ways to enhance your invoice. Finally, understand the line items. We get into lots of different arguments with adjusters who simply don't understand the line items and how they're written. I'll give you one example. Happened 2 weeks ago with one of our CREST clients, and I had to come to the rescue. And the language in the line item is for the use of a HEPA vacuum. And it says vacuum with HEPA filter. That's exactly how it's described when you're using a HEPA vacuum. Now, the adjuster is reading that to mean that any replacement filters are included because it's the vacuum and the replacement of the filter. That's how he was reading vacuum with HEPA filter. That's how he was reading the definition of that. That is clearly not the definition. The definition means a HEPA vacuum is a vacuum with a HEPA filter. That's what defines what a HEPA vacuum is. When you need to replace the filter on the HEPA vacuum, it's a separate line item in Xactimate. Don't allow yourself to get cheated. You have to bill for such things as replacement filters, especially now in this COVID world. We can't take the chance of cross-contamination, so we have to do more frequent filter changes. We should also make sure we're charging for decontamination on every single invoice for every piece of equipment. I know the answer. We only pay for decontamination on Cat 3 losses and only for the equipment that was in there before the final cleaning was done. Blah, blah, blah. Not in a COVID world. You owe it to the client to make sure that that equipment is fully decontaminated before putting it in their home because it came from someone else's home. And we just don't know. You have to clean that equipment. That's a direct cost to the job. You have to invoice for that. So basically, the short answer is know how to execute the project properly, follow that S500 and S520, and then know Xactimate. Make sure you're not leaving money on the table. almost everybody who isn't making money at the end of the year or not making enough money at the end of the year, this is the reason why. They're not executing to the standard and they're not invoicing fully and completely. Thanks, Dick.
Thanks, Bill. I probably get this question. I had it yesterday. I get this question regularly. It seems to me that almost every small to medium restoration contractor that's either been lucky enough to do some commercial work that landed in their lap, or they've been doing residential work and they're pretty comfortable with it, and they want to just expand and reach out and get some commercial clients and commercial jobs, but more consistently. You know, the average residential restoration contractor will excuse me, will land one or two commercial type jobs a year, and many of them, if they can execute them well, think they died and went to heaven. They're used to invoicing $3, $4, $5, $6, $7,000 residential jobs, and all of a sudden they land a $50 or $75 or $100,000 commercial job once or twice a year. And you know, the first thing they want to do, of course, is go buy a motorhome or a boat or a Maserati. But my recommendation and my guidance to you on going after commercial clients is first to understand what your current capabilities, expertise, capacity is within your organization right now. And if you feel confident that you can handle in the next 6 to 12 months, that you can handle a fairly consistent amount of commercial work, then by all means, let's talk and start designing a strategy for you to go after commercial clients. I will give you a couple quick ideas. We have learned from coaching and teaching this for the past 12 or 13 years. We have learned that you don't just get in your vehicle with a load of company literature and a stack of refrigerator magnets and just drive down the street and stop at every commercial building that you see. It doesn't work like that. It won't work like that. You need to first decide which particular vertical, and a vertical is an industry type. For example, hotels is a vertical. You need to decide what type of vertical you're most comfortable with. Most of my clients don't ever tell me, oh, we want to go after hospitals first. That'd be pretty unusual because hospitals are a vertical that requires a very, very unique style of doing business with them. So first off, you need to decide what type of vertical, what industry type you are most comfortable with. And then let's compile a list of every single one of that type of client that's in your market. And then we design the materials, the pre-disaster binder that you're going to use for show and tell. And then we're going to teach you how to approach them, what to say, how to interact with them without looking and sounding like a salesperson. Because as you know, you don't like salespeople approaching you, and they aren't going to like you approaching them if you're looking and acting like a salesperson. So there's a whole strategy on going after the commercial world. If you are a CREST Elite member, you have access to anything and everything that you would ever want to know about going after commercial clients. There are 10, I think there are 10 or 12 different lengthy dissertations or lengthy white papers on individual industry types or individual verticals, and then some additional papers, white papers on the marketing strategy or the concept behind the scenes. All of that information is available for CREST members. And if you're not a CREST member, you should be, but it's a wealth of information. It's actually a 3-day class, 8 hours a day for 3 days straight with me or me and Bill. And it's at the end of the 8 hours and certainly at the end of 3 days, it's mind numbing, but it's the kind of information you need if you really want to go after the commercial market and get consistent commercial jobs. Will they come in on the third day of every single month? No. The goal would be to get somewhere between 6 and 12 of them a year. Many of our clients do that already. Some clients are still struggling to achieve that. If you want to talk more about it, all you got to do is reach out and call me. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Dick. We get this quite a bit, especially from restorers who are not CREST members, who are looking to find out more about our company. Will you work with other consultants within my company? The short and long answer is yes, absolutely. Our goal at the CREST Network is just to make your company a better version of itself. We have specific areas of expertise that Dick and I feel very few other companies can offer. That said, we don't consider ourselves jacks of all trades. We don't believe that we can singularly take your company to the next level. Dick is an expert at marketing. I would not profess to know the first thing about marketing other than having had the blessing of sitting in his classes and webinars and seminars for the last 11 years. Other than that, that's what I know about marketing. I have the luxury of having 25 years of Wall Street experience and spending my life there. And the way my mind works, I love numbers and finance. That's where I believe that I excel and I can do those kinds of things. But I'm the first one to admit that I'm not good at everything. I'm really good at a couple of things, and most of the other areas I will defer to others. So there is no reason for us not to want to work with other consultants within the company, within the industry, and within your company. The only caveat to that is the only time it will succeed is if we're all rowing in the same direction. Just like these cogs here, the team concept only works when the teeth are all lined up. If someone's in there and rowing against you and basically making it all about them instead of all about you, then we're all going to have a difficult time, and we're probably not the right fit for you if you're insisting on working with that particular type of consultant. I'm not going to mention names. There are a couple of individuals in this industry who you can tell pretty early on whether they're there for you or they're there for them. If they are there for you, then Dick and I know that there is no issue at all with us being able to work with them towards a common goal, which is you. So just understand, we welcome the ability, if you're working with other types of consultants, if you have certain coaches, if you have motivational coaches, if you've got other kind of people within the industry working on different aspects of your company, we are more than happy to fit in with the overall plan and the overall scheme, and with the understanding, as long as we're all working together towards a common goal, which is you, that's our mission as well. Thanks, Dick.
Okay. Next question. Can you evaluate my social media efforts and recommend a better strategy? Recently had this kind of call less than a week ago. Maybe it's been a week now. And I'm going to tell you, I thrive on evaluating and understanding and knowing the social media that they're dealing with today and what we've been dealing with for the past 12 to 15 years. One of the reasons why I enjoy it, especially when I'm talking to somebody face to face, or I'm at a class and the owner has brought in their outside social media person to hear what I have to say on day 3 of a class about social media. The fun part is they always bring in, it is always a 20-something or an early 30-something social media expert. And I know exactly what they're thinking when they meet me. They're thinking, oh my God, this old man is going to teach me something. This should be fun. And I'm almost seeing it in their eyes. The fact is that when I started as a coach consultant 12, 15 years ago, and ultimately about 11 years ago full time, I didn't have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend to promote my services. The only thing I had was, where I could afford it, was social media because it was free. And so I have consumed probably more social media advice books than you have all read in the past 10 years combined. And so I understand that social media, and you need to understand this as well, this social media strategy that everybody is always talking about must include, and I'm going to rattle off a series of them here. It must include the marketer making phone calls to prospects and clients. It must include the marketer making text message interactions with prospects and clients, sending out emails. And we talked in an earlier question here about email newsletters weekly. There must be hand-mailed, United Postal Service mailed personal notes and or thank yous. You must engage in Facebook, not just Facebook on your personal Facebook page, but on a Facebook business page, and even better, on a Facebook page specifically targeting a particular client type. The same thing with Twitter. And I have had some people say, well, we have a Twitter account, but we don't do very much with Twitter. Well, it's kind of like you have to understand that just because you are engaging with 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 people on your Facebook business page, those same people aren't on Twitter. But there is a whole nother world of Twitter people that you should also be reaching. So you should be engaging and active on Twitter. Another one that always raises eyebrows is Pinterest, or Pinterest, however you want to pronounce it. Pinterest is a visual platform. Pinterest loves photos and videos. And you know what's interesting is that in the disaster recovery business, we're in a visual industry. Visual in the sense of a burned out house, visual in the sense of water 2 feet deep in the basement, visual in the sense of gross, disgusting mold on the walls. And I can go on and on, but those are great visuals. Oddly enough, people love those just like they love a train wreck, just like they love to watch a NASCAR group of cars smash up. People love that stuff. And you have the opportunity as a remediator to show the before and then show the after. And Pinterest is a great platform for that. I have an active Pinterest account, and I get, I didn't look today, but generally in the past few days when I did go in and look, I'm getting 12 or 1300 viewers a month. And I have like 10 or 12 different Pinterest boards. So there are so many different ways that you should be engaging, and it should not be a commercial. Back to what I said in the things you should not do in an email newsletter, you shouldn't do on Facebook or on Twitter. And I think I have 16 or 1700 connections or friends on my Facebook account. And I can tell you, when I see all these different restoration contractors all posting things that are essentially a pat on the back to themselves, it upsets me because nobody wants to see that. And on a rare occasion, when I've talked to a client about it, they say, yeah, we don't get, we had at one point 250 followers, but that's dropped down now to 175. And then you go and you look at the kinds of things that they've been posting, and it was all self-serving, self-promoting, pictures of their trucks, pictures of their equipment. Nobody wants to see it. Even pictures of their logo is the post for the day. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. If you need help with social media, by all means, reach out to me. We'll talk about it. It goes on. Blog articles is crucial to your engagement in social media. Blogging is an absolute necessity in this day and age. Bill, I think
That's
there
it.
we go.
That's the one. Yeah, I think this is the last question, Dick.
Yes.
I got this one yesterday afternoon, obviously with Hurricane Zeta making its way to the Gulf Coast again. With all the hurricanes this year, I feel like I missed out. What can I do to be ready for next year? Before I even give you tips on how to be ready for next year, you have to do some soul searching, and you have to ask yourself if chasing hurricanes is a proper business model for you. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Not everybody is meant to chase hurricanes. Not everybody can handle all that comes with going out and chasing hurricanes. Our dear friends, Scott Tarpley and Misty and Rhonda, their business is to chase large losses and to chase hurricanes and to go into cat zones and support other contractors and other restorers. They've been out there for 3-4 months already now, and there's no sign of them going home anytime soon. But that's their business model. You have to ask yourself, is this your business model? Is this what you want to be known as? Or do you just want to pop in, make a fortune, help some people out, and, hit a home run? Guys, it's not a home run. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of risk. Yes, if things go really, really well, you'll make good money. Risk always aligns with reward. Very rarely are you going to have a low risk situation with a high reward. Most of the times that's a scam. In chasing hurricanes and in large loss in general, when you leave your home base, you're changing the dynamic of how you have to work. Right now, we need to have a certain amount of float, we need to have a certain amount of equipment, and we need to have a certain amount of personnel. If you leave your home base and you want to do large loss, you need a lot more of all of that. So my recommendation to you is, if you really want to do this, it's not going to start till next July or so. That gives you a good 8-9 months. Start saving money first and foremost. You're going to need a lot of cash. You're going to need a lot of money to pay bills because, number one, you may not get a job. Number two, if you do get a job, you're going to have to wait a lot longer than normal to get paid. Number three, you're going to have to access other resources, and those resources are going to cost you. So always make sure you have a lot of money. So start saving. You might also need to build up your portable equipment inventory as well. Yes, you can always get small equipment on the road, but the small equipment is what really gives you a good profit on the road. You're not going to be able to bring your entire staff with you, so you're going to need to bring a couple of key personnel basically to perform supervisory duties, and you'll have to access labor at the local level. So make sure you have your portable equipment. With that piece, the other piece is, do not go out and buy large equipment. Do not go out and buy generators or desiccant dehumidifiers. You do not want to do that. That's a poor investment for you. That's a poor use of your funds. You have to develop relationships with companies like Scott Tarpley, because DEI has all the equipment, or the drying team, DEI or the drying team has all the equipment and expertise you're going to need on the large side. Bring some small stuff with you so that you make some money on your own equipment, but do not spend $100,000 going out buying a little kit with a generator and a desiccant. You won't need that, and chances are you're not going to be able to use that enough in any 1 or 2 seasons to make your money back. So why even bother? So my recommendations would be, first, analyze whether you've got everything buttoned down at home, whether you can leave and know that everything's going to be able to operate without missing a beat. That's first and foremost. Secondly, have you saved up enough money to be able to finance that entire job yourself? Number three, do you have enough resources that you could bring with you to make it worth your while? And those resources would be some key personnel that could do supervisory tasks for you and oversight, and some equipment, some portable, smaller equipment. If you can answer yes to all 3 of those things, then I think we should entertain a talk next April or May as the storm season's coming about. If you can't answer yes to all 3, my recommendation is stay home and go back to the question Dick said before. Start thinking about marketing for some commercial work in your own area. So much easier to do, so much easier to execute, and so much easier to get paid on. And guess what, guys? You might fall into a trap where you're going to find yourself making more money at home than you ever would have by leaving. That's it for me, Dick.
And that's it for me as well. Let's get to the right screen here. On behalf of Bill, myself, and the CREST Network, thanks so much. We had a decent turnout today. This is a public webinar, and so we're going to, it'll be posted on the CREST website under the public side. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks, Bill, for your help.
Thank you, Dick. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye-bye.